welcome back to the Mike and Andrew Show. I'm Andrew Serwick here again with Mike Meredith. Mike, it was a very interesting weekend in the world of sports. Obviously, we had the NFL Combine. Um, Yesterday, we had a coach get fired, but we're going to get all into that. But, Mike, how are you doing this evening, man?
Doing good, man. Yeah, the world of sports. I mean, something's always going on.
Yeah, that it is. We had a trade happen in the NHL just a couple hours ago, so we'll get into that as well. But first things first, man, we're gonna get into the Devils. They fired Lindy Ruff, who was their head coach for the last 4 years. Um, Travis Green is going to be the interim head coach for the rest of the season. He was the assistant coach for I believe the last 3 years. It might have been all no, it might have been all four if I remember correctly. No, I take that back. He's been there since the 2022-2023 season. So the last 2 seasons now, or 3 seasons now. Um, Whatever. Anyways, they they play their first game tonight. I believe actually they are playing it right now at the time of recording. Um, it's an interesting move to do it this late into the season. Yes, the Devils have been underperforming a lot this year. They really disappointed me personally. They're kind of like my like third or fourth team that I cheer for. Um, but it's an interesting move for sure, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough for them to get into the playoffs unless they make some big trades this week before Friday. Um, but yeah, a very very surprising move. You wouldn't think this late into the season they would do it. You would think maybe December, maybe early January, and that's about it. But right before the trade deadline is kind of an odd spot heading into the playoffs to fire your coach if you want to have a turnaround like the Edmonton Oilers this year after firing their coach at the midway point of November, and now they're a playoff team and looking like the Edmonton that they should have been to start the season. So they they need to make a big playoff push. This is a very, like I said, I think this is just one step in the right direction for the Devils, but they desperately, desperately need to make some moves, and a lot of big ones if they want to have any chance of even catching Tampa Bay or Detroit right now. They're just so far ahead in terms of points that realistically, yes, a coaching change could help, but there's so few games left. Roughly around 20 games per team left, give or take, 2 or 3 games. There's it's not enough time to make up 7-8 points that they're behind. So, yeah, they need to be very desperate. And Jack Hughes even said that the runway is not that long, so we've got to be really really desperate. Meaning they got to play desperate. And that can either be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you view it. The way I view it is kind of in a bad way. If you're playing desperate, you're going to make a lot more mistakes, and you're going to be open to
Yeah.
a lot more, just bad things happening in general. But Mike, what's your takeaway on this, man?
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough for the Devils here. I mean, having a new coach this late, it's so tough. You don't really see teams doing this. Usually, they just wait until the next season and the off season to make the change. I mean, I do like the move, getting them some playing time with this new coach, but I agree. I think it's just too late in the season for them to really do anything with it. Um, but who knows? Maybe this will be a good step for them. I mean, at least they're actually taking action and making the change, because I know that a lot of teams will be hesitant and not make that move. But yeah, I think that is solid for the Devils, and we'll see how it pans out for them next season.
Yeah, it should at least help their season the rest of the way. At least be better than what they were to start in the first 60-ish games this year for them. Um, Green was he was previously a coach in Vancouver from 2017 to 2022. Um, so it's an interesting move for sure. Is it gonna be the correct move? We'll find out. But I think yeah, it's too late. But I feel like it's at least a step in the right direction. Granted, Lindy Ruff isn't a bad coach. It's just sometimes coaches go through these coaching slumps, and you see this happen in every sport almost, except you don't really see it happen in the NFL all too much. But in basketball and hockey especially, you'll see coaches, be at the top of their game, and then all of a sudden they're not at it, and then they just go to a new place, and suddenly they're back to being a great coach again. Um, you can look at for example, Scotty Bowman. I mean, when before he came to Detroit, he was already a legendary coach as it was. He kind of had a couple down years, and then came to Detroit, and obviously brought Detroit, 3 cups within 5 seasons. So I mean, um, you see this happen a lot in sports, but again, this I think for Lindy Ruff, it's kind of unfortunate that this season played out the way it did. But I just don't see how this is going to really make the Devils have a playoff push. And granted, that roster is stacked, but again, this late in the season, I think it's just a little too late, unless they make some trades. And speaking of trades, we just had a trade drop a couple hours ago. Anthony Mantha from the Washington Capitals is heading to Las Vegas to play for the Golden Knights. Um, the Capitals get in return a 2024 second round pick and a 2026 fourth round pick. The Caps are also retaining 50% of the contract, which is why they actually ended up getting the fourth round pick um, from Las Vegas. Mantha's gonna be he's a pending UFA this year, so obviously Vegas has a chance to re-sign him if they want it. The Capitals, they're 7 points out, but considering this is a selling move, yeah, I think the Caps realize that they're just going to fold this season and maybe try and come back next season for one last playoff push with Ovi before they start to get into send him off mode. Um, I feel like this is going to be good for Mantha. I think Vegas actually ends up winning this trade because one, they only have to pay 50% of the cap hit, so they have enough cap space still to make some moves before the deadline still, which is really good. And Vegas lacks scoring depth, which is what they had last year. They don't have it this year. So, and I think Mantha, while he's been okay this year in Washington, he's not playing on the greatest team right now. I feel like he could definitely improve his point production in Vegas. So I think all around this is a really good win for Vegas to try and win a uh, the Stanley Cup again. And for Washington, you still have to pay 50% of the contract, but you got 2 picks out of him, and you kind of go back because when Detroit traded Mantha to the Capitals, I think everyone thought Steve Yzerman kind of fleeced them, but this is kind of a pretty good payout, I think, for what they got out of Mantha. All these past few years, especially that run towards the cup that ended up failing after they retained or after they got Mantha. So they did. I think they made out pretty well, minus the retaining of half the contract. But I think this is a win-win, and it's a very good win, I think, for Vegas. So, Mike, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm gonna be honest. I don't really know how this trade really affect too much of either team, but I do remember very well Mantha's trade from Detroit. That was a big move, just going around because we were rumored to trade him for like at least a couple years. I think at that point that he could be our big moving piece to get something back in return. And like you said, we made a big return on him. But I think that you know um, Washington got a pretty solid haul back for him at this time as well. So I think that they still made out pretty well with the trade of Mantha here.
Yeah, I think overall it was a really good deal for both teams. I think for Vegas, it definitely helps in an area that they're lacking. That's just scoring depth, like I said. So, um, yeah, it's gonna be interesting because Vegas right now they're kind of in a slump. They've lost, I believe, 7 out of the last 10 games, if I remember correctly. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, yeah, no, they've lost 8 out of their last 10 games. Yeah, they're 2-7-1 in their last 10 games. So yeah, they and some of these losses have been to not good teams. They lost to Buffalo. They lost to Columbus. They lost to Ottawa in the shootout. The only teams they've beaten in these last 10 games was at Toronto and at San Jose. So, oh no, that was home against San Jose. So, um, yeah, Vegas they're struggling lately, especially now that Mark Stone's on the injured reserve list for now till probably the playoffs because he's not actually injured, but it is what it is. Circumventing the cap, gotta do that now in the NHL to succeed. But yeah, I think this is good for Vegas overall, and yeah, we'll go with that from there. So moving on from the NHL to the NFL. Um, there's some combine stuff that I want to talk about. There's some free agency stuff. What do you want to hit first, Mike?
Let's hit free agency because I know that there was some big stuff that went on the last couple of days.
Yeah, let's get into it, man. Obviously, I think the biggest one is the Broncos cutting
Mm-hmm.
Russell Wilson. Why don't you talk about that, man? What were your initial thoughts? What was it
Man,
yesterday when they announced that?
yeah. So Broncos are releasing Russell Wilson. It's an 85 mil dead cap hit. The second and third most highest before this was a combined 80.5. So Russ basically just shattered that record. I think it's gonna be one of the trades that go down in infamy, where it's like, this is why you don't trade for an aging quarterback, even though when they traded for Russ, there was no signs that he had seriously declined or that he was going to seriously be this bad. But yeah, I mean, just 2 years of Russell Wilson, you gave up so much and you paid him so much. You're losing all that money with the dead cap hit. Just it's going to go down as one of those trades, like I said, that you look at. It's like, yeah, um, where you don't trade for an aging QB like that because um, they could just fall apart like that. I mean, not everyone's Brady. Not everyone's going to play really well when they get older. And it seems like Russ, man, I do think he'll find himself a home with another team. I mean, so many teams need QBs. Like the Steelers, I think have been the one I've heard the most that he could go to. Um, but I don't know if Russ is going to last much longer in the league, man. Especially because getting released by Denver after that contract's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, it was wild yesterday. That's a huge cap hit. Obviously, Seattle made out huge on this trade. I mean, let's see, they got a whole bunch of picks. Noah Fant, Drew Lock, and there was one other player involved. If I remember correctly, in this trade. But yeah, no, it's gonna go down as one of the worst uh, trades in the history of the NFL, maybe even in sports. But
I don't know about
uh, it's nothing as bad as like the Herschel Walker deal.
yeah.
Like I don't think anything is ever gonna top that in sports history in terms of um what what happened in that deal in particular, but no, it's definitely one of the worst deals in at least NFL history. I mean, they gave up so much, and now they have this huge dead cap hit on top of cutting Russell. Man, um, yeah, it's been wild. Seattle, I know today cut a couple players today. One of them was a Lion a few years ago. Quandre Diggs. They cut him. Maybe Detroit could try and get him back. Obviously, he got traded when the Quintricia regime was here. And he seems like a Dan Campbell kind of guy, so I think that would be kind of nice to see Quandre Diggs come back. I know it's not a need for the Lions, but you have him or C.J. Gardner Johnson. Who do you want to really pay on your to be on your team? I know C.J. is a lot younger. Well, not a lot younger. He's only 4 years younger, but Diggs he's had 4 Pro Bowl seasons in Seattle, so I mean he still has it in him. What I mean, did you see anything about that today?
Um, yeah, I actually didn't really see that today, but that'd be interesting to see. I'm not really pressed if we get Diggs back, but man, if they end up doing it, I'd be all right with it.
Yeah, I would not be mad about it at all. Um, but yeah, so there's still a lot of free agents out there. I mean, obviously teams are still shedding weight um, right now, especially teams that are trying to rebuild, like a Denver right now. Obviously, getting rid of Russell Wilson's huge. Sucks for them because of the issues involving all the cap that they have to eat up. That's just sitting there now, but it is what it is. I've seen some things, rumors here and there about different players about going. I saw I saw somewhere like yesterday or Sunday, I think. I can't remember. Um, Someone was saying that Chris Jones is actually more than likely going to stay in Kansas City. I don't necessarily buy that though because they're just so tight on the cap. I know they could probably pay him now with how much the cap increased this year, but I guess Mike, where do you want to start? Like, do you want to start just naming teams who we think would be a good fit at whatever team at X team, or how do you want to do this, man?
Yeah, I mean that sounds fine with me.
All right, so I have this list of it's on ESPN, just a list of the top 100 available um, uh, free agents heading into free agency, which I believe opens up this week or next week. Um, Anyways, I'm just gonna go. We'll just go through maybe like the top 20 here and kind of just pin players to teams and just kind of go from there. So, um, actually, let's just do the top 10 for time's sake. So they got number 10 here. They have Kendall Fuller, cornerback from Washington. Um, I think honestly a really good fit for him would be Detroit. Um, because the way I view the draft is corners are kind of come and go. If they're a bust, they're a bust. That's just a special teams player. If you get if draft high up a defensive lineman, even if they aren't the greatest, they could still be in your rotation, and that still helps your team. So I think the Lions should try and target a corner in free agency, and then just go through in the draft and try to draft defensive linemen. I think that'd be their best bet. I think Kendall Fuller, he's a Dan Campbell kind of guy. I think he'd be a really good fit in Detroit.
Yeah, I think that's a solid fit too. I think he'd be a nice guy to fit in with the culture here.
Yeah, I think yeah, culturally, I think he'd fit in just well, and he's got that gritty play style that we need in the corner. I did see the Lions did sign Emmanuel Mosley for another 1 year contract. I believe that was today. Um, so I think that's obviously a very good thing if he could actually stay healthy this time around, and we don't have to have Cam Sutton playing the number one corner spot. The Lions could be a little bit different here. So number 9 here they have Bryce Huff, edge rusher from the Jets. He's 26 years old. He had 7.5 sacks over his first 3 seasons here. So not really anything uh, spectacular um, from him, but he's still young. He could definitely help on the edge. Um, you think maybe San Francisco could use him for sure. Obviously, Detroit could use him, but I don't see him going there. Um, the Vikings are losing Daniil Hunter so unless they find a way to sign him. That might be a good place for him as well. Um, maybe Tampa Bay could use him as well. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different spots that he could go as well. Um, I like that Tampa pick, man. To be honest with you, that definitely seems interesting. I know they just re-signed Mike Evans as well.
Yeah, I mean Tampa will still have a lot of cap space. They need help on defense. An edge rusher would definitely help that defense. So I think a guy like him could work. But there's going to be a lot of edge rushers available. So Bryce Huff could be one of them to go to Tampa. Chase Young could be another one. He's number 7 here. I know I skipped number 8, but we'll just go to Chase Young real quick. Man, I don't know where he's gonna go. I don't think it's gonna be Detroit because he takes plays off, and Dan Campbell ain't gonna have that. And I don't think Brad Holmes would want to have to sign a guy that takes plays off. And well, yeah, he can make big plays at certain times, man. He takes plays off, but maybe a team like Philly, if they can afford him, could definitely use him. But outside of that, I don't really know where I see Chase Young going.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams that say like pretty much every team could use another pass rusher. Um, yeah, Detroit, you know, might not fit entirely here, but we definitely do need another edge rusher on the opposite side. Maybe there's better options out there, but I don't know. Again, if there's a specific team that I see him going to, a lot of these guys, I mean, they just feel like guys that could fit in so many different spots. That's like basically like who's gonna pull the trigger and who's gonna want Chase Young.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest issues too. Is like who is gonna pull the trigger on some of these big names. I mean, obviously there's a lot of teams that have a lot of cap space, and there's a lot of teams also that have no cap space at all, and that's why I think we're seeing such a really deep free agent class this year, specifically. Maybe San Diego would be a good spot for him because San Diego needs just about every position, and a guy like Chase Young I think could fit in pretty well there. Same with here. They have number 8, Leonard Williams, defensive tackle from Seattle. No shock, really, that he's up this high. I mean, he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league. Really good, uh, against the run. He's a very good pass rusher as well. Um, it'd be interesting to see where he goes. Um, like I said, even like a San Diego definitely needs help everywhere on that defensive line. I know you definitely know that, being a fan of the Chargers. Um, yeah, what's your thoughts on him, man?
Yeah, I mean, wasn't too crazy about him on the Chargers, but I mean, he's very good. Again, D tackles, man, could go a lot of different places. Probably a solid playoff contender. I think is going to be a solid fit. To be honest with you, I don't see a team that's really out of the playoff picture signing him. Um, Team that could really just use that one interior defensive lineman to really bolster up that D line.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Robert Hunt's available. He's number 6. He's a guard. I'm surprised Miami didn't try to retain him. I know he wants to get paid. He's 28 years old. He's big, but he can move for his size. 6'6", 322 pounds, but he can move really, really well. Um, he's a very, very good pass protector. I'm surprised Miami's letting him go. To be honest with you, um, yeah, I think a team like Washington could desperately use him. I know he probably doesn't want to go to a team that isn't a contender, but just trying to think of teams that are contenders that need offensive line. I can't think of any that desperately need an elite level guard, um, outside of maybe Detroit trying to get an upgrade. But even then, I don't even see that happening because Detroit really doesn't need the upgrade. I just don't see a contender that would actually be willing to pay him, just because a lot of these contending teams are you know already solid up front, especially in the guard position. So I just don't see. But obviously the Commanders, they desperately need offensive line because Sam Howell was getting sacked every single play, it seems, and obviously they also gave up a ton of tackles for losses. So someone like him going there would be pretty good. Baker Mayfield, I feel like him and Russell Wilson, though, they're going to become the next Teddy Bridgewater, where you were a starter, you were a good starter, you weren't a great starter after a few years, and then yeah, just now you're just going to be a backup quarterback somewhere. I feel like Baker's just going to be a backup somewhere, and same with Russell Wilson, to be honest with you, man.
Yeah, I kind of agree. But yeah, O line. I mean, again, anywhere that I mean, the Commanders, the Panthers, all those teams could use offensive linemen.
Yeah, you got Daniil Hunter, Christian Wilkins, both defensive linemen that are available. Daniil Hunter, I think, is an interesting one for sure. I'd love to see Detroit try and grab him, but um, we'll see what happens with that. Christian Wilkins, though, from Miami. Miami, a team that struggled on defense, losing him, that's a big blow to them. But they don't want to pay him, so it is what it is there. I just don't see how Miami's going to try and win a Super Bowl when yes, offense matters in the regular season. In the playoffs, though, you need defense to win, and Miami's just doing everything they possibly can to not win in the playoffs, but to just win in the regular season. So yeah, losing Christian Wilkins, I don't know where he goes. Um, maybe a team like a who was I just trying to think of? A team like Philly would definitely be a good fit for sure. Um, any of the teams in the NFC South, really, except for Carolina. I mean, Carolina could use him, but he's going to want to go to a contender. And basically, the Saints, Falcons, and Bucks all have a chance at winning their division. So at least they have, if they would sign him, they could desperately use the help up front on the defensive line. Same thing with Daniil Hunter going to any of those teams too. It'll be interesting to see for sure. Last one I really want to get into here is Kirk Cousins. I mean, where do you see him going? Do you even think he's going to be a starter anywhere?
Yes, I do. I think he's a starter. Team I've been hearing the most for him is Atlanta. I've been hearing Atlanta like crazy, and it makes sense. I mean, he could be a veteran QB that could take over for a year or two while they let like someone like Bo Nix, or if they really want to take a shot with JJ McCarthy, let those guys sit. for a year or two and learn behind Kirk Cousins. Kirk is good enough to where he can win you games, and but I mean, I think we can all agree Kirk's not going to win you a Super Bowl, but he's feasible enough to. I mean, he can at least get you to the playoffs. Um, so I'd say Atlanta.
Yeah, no, I think Atlanta would be a perfect fit for him. If they don't sign him, I think he's going to be a backup anywhere else. I think really Atlanta is probably the only option he has to be a starter. Um, it'll be interesting to see where he does sign, but I think if he does sign at Atlanta, it'd be a great thing for them because Atlanta could then take a Bo Nix in the second round. They don't even have to waste their first round pick on Bo Nix. They can go ahead and get a weapon for Kirk Cousins to play with or a defensive weapon. But Atlanta has a really good defense as it is. So I don't think they're really going to be focusing too much on that. I think offensive line should be their focus, and where they're sitting, they could easily take an offensive lineman, and then again in the second round, take a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, and have them sit behind um, Kirk. The problem with that is though is Kirk not Kirk Penix and Bo Nix are both kind of older. So if they take that risk and draft JJ, I think that would maybe long term benefit them more than taking a Bo Nix or Penix because again, those guys are a lot older than JJ. Grant, I think they're a lot better talents than JJ, but they've both played. I think 6 or 7 years in college, and JJ's only has 3. So I think the age difference will definitely it's lowered both Bo Nix and Michael Penix's draft stock a lot. So yeah, I think Atlanta would be a great spot for Kirk, and get a young QB to learn under him. Maybe not learn how to turn into a pumpkin like him come the big playoff games, but yeah, I think Kirk can definitely win that division if he's in Atlanta. So, but yeah, that's gonna wrap up the NFL. So I know we wanted to talk about the combine, but um, we're trying to cut tonight's episode a little short. Thursday's episode, of course, we're going to talk if there's any more trades in the NHL. We'll definitely talk about all of those. And then next Tuesday, we will cover everything that happens at the NHL trade deadline on Friday. So yeah, Mike, yeah, anything else before we get going here, though, man?
Nah, man. Just stay tuned for next week's episode.
Yes, and so with that, guys, rate, review, subscribe, help us out. Let us know what you want to see. Check out our YouTube page. Spread the word about the podcast, man. We're trying to grow, and we're slowly seeing some growth here. So, any growth is good growth. So, but yeah, we'll just keep pumping these episodes out for you guys, of course. And yeah, like I said, check out our YouTube page, subscribe, spread the word, man. It really helps us out. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you guys on Thursday.